Hey everyone, how you doing today? My name's Kirsty and we are coming into that time of year where a lot of people are starting to share the 12 books in the year, so getting friends to recommend 12 books to them to read throughout the following year. So I thought it would be really cool if I composed my own list, and so here are 12 books that I think you should read in 2024. Obviously, I'm not expecting you to add every single one of these to your list, but I just thought it would be nice for me to throw my hat into the ring and sort of go through some books that I personally recommend, that I have loved and that I would like people to read. I have categorized these, and some of these will fit into multiple things, and there are so many other books that I wanted, so getting it down to 12 was really hard for me. But here we go. If you want to read my all-time favourite series, I'm also doing a read-along with this, and we will be starting book 4 in January, so you still have time to catch up. I would recommend Slave to Sensation by Nalini Singh. It's book 1 in the Side Changeling series, which is my all-time favourite series. It's not necessarily the best series in the world out there, but for me it's a comfort series, and it's one that I go back to time and time again, and I adore the world, the characters, and I love this series so much. It is my favourite, and yeah, I recommend it. If you are looking for a book with disability rep, I recommend 16 Souls by Rosie Talbot. This is her YA debut and her first ever debut, and it's exquisite. The disability rep in here is fantastic. There's multiple types of disability rep, from mental health to physical disability to deafness. There is a lot in here, and it was so well written, and the storyline is also fantastic, so give that a chance. If you are looking for an audiobook, I recommend Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall. Not only is the story fantastic, but the narration is done by my absolute favourite narrator, which is Joe Jameson, and he just brings all of these characters to incredible life, and the way he did some of the characters, especially Luke's mum, it was so brilliant, and you forget that it is just one person narrating all these people because he is that good. And yeah, and the book itself is fantastic, and I loved it and gave it 5 stars. If you are looking for an urban paranormal romance with fae, fairies, dark things, and a little bit of smut, I recommend the Fever series by Karen Marie Moning. Max starts off as one of the worst characters I think I've ever written, and I hated her, but by the end of this book, and certainly by the end of the series, she is an absolute badass, a force to be reckoned with, and I love the dynamics between her and Jericho Barons, who's the main male lead in this. It is toxic. There are trigger warnings for, it's a very power play relationship at first. It's very abusive at times. But ultimately, I do find it is a brilliant story, and I just have loved this series now for about 10 years, and I definitely highly recommend it. If you are looking for an adult queer romance, I recommend Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. I absolutely fell in love with this. Delilah is the sassiest and best character ever. Her attitude, her sass, her whole way of being, but there's also a fragility to her that really resonated with me. And I also really liked Claire and her dynamic as being a mum and having this new relationship and balancing parenthood with relationships. It was a fantastic story. It had me laughing out loud, and I've highlighted way more of this book than I thought I was going to. If you are looking for an introduction to adult fantasy, so maybe you feel like you don't want to read any more YA, but you're not quite ready to go into those really deep, heavy adult fantasies a la Brandon Sanderson, Robin Hobb, etc., I recommend Dark Shades of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This is a book that is adult, all the characters are adults, a lot of the themes are darker, but it still has a very easy, approachable writing style that makes it very readable, and it makes it very accessible no matter what. And the magic system isn't super complicated. It's very well explained. The world building, again, is kind of familiar because it's all different London, so even though there's different languages and different words and things, it still feels similar because you can at least picture London. And I just really love this series. I'm currently rereading this one, and it's just one of my favourites. And Lila Bard is one of my all-time favourite characters. Some people think she's a bit whiny and childish, but I don't think that. I love her. She can be a bit whiny. She can be a bit childish with her petulance and stubbornness, but I still think she is an incredible character, and I just love her, and I love her and Kel. Their dynamic is brilliant, and Holland, yeah, the less I say about Holland, the better. If you are looking for a YA fantasy that is really, really well done and has incredible world building, and you really like intense, in-depth world building that's got a lot of backstory and a lot of info dumping, you will love Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. It took me until my second read through to fully appreciate and love this book, because certainly in the first book, the information given to us is very kind of dumpy, and at times it did drag the plot down for me. But when I read it the second time, I really, really loved it. It's based on the legend of King Arthur, and it has got a lot of Welsh in there and Welsh mythology. So it is quite heavy on the lore and world building, but the storyline, the characters, and everything else weave together to create this incredible plot. And honestly, I think this is one of the, if not the best YA fantasy I've ever read. If you are looking for an indie/KU recommendation, I would recommend Not All Heroes Wear Capes by an author whose name has slipped my brain, but I will put it here for you. This is a very adult, very spicy dom-sub relationship between a hero and a villain, and there is hero corruption in here, there is villain redemption in here, there is a few different kinks in here, but it was so well written, the characters were great, it had me addicted from the first page, and I just loved this, which I wasn't expecting to, but I actually really loved this. And I've read the sort of novella sequel to it as well, and it was just as good, and I just thought it was really well done. And as you know, I don't really do smut a lot, and smut has to be written very specifically for me to enjoy it, and this hit every single checkpoint for me. So yeah, I just thought it was really well done. If you want a queer YA with magical elements and a little bit of fantasy with a fantastic Latinx representation as well, so you're getting culture in there as well, I recommend Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. I've read this twice now. It's one of my all-time favourites. It is probably my all-time favourite YA, and it is just such a beautiful story. The characters are fantastic. The culture representation and the attitudes of certain cultures towards trans people, it tugs at your heartstrings. It's a very emotional read, but it's also so poignant and makes such a great point without it being too overbearing and without removing too much from the plot. And it's just such a gorgeous book, and the narration on the audiobook is also sublime. So I recommend anyone give it a read, whether you physically or audiobook, but it is so good. Please read it. If you are looking for a manga, I recommend Fruits Basket. This is quite a classic manga now. It's a gorgeous anime, it's a gorgeous manga, it's a beautiful story about a young woman called Toru Honda who, after her mother dies, she moves in with her grandfather, but unfortunately needs some work done to the house, so she decides to live in a tent. Unfortunately, she pitches her tent on the estate of the Soma family, where she ends up being interweaved with their lives, and she discovers that the Soma family is under a curse where they have been cursed by the spirits of the 12 zodiac, and so those that are cursed, if they are hugged by anyone of the opposite sex, they will transform into their cursed animal. And she gets involved in all of the shenanigans and works to try and help break the curse. And it's just such a beautiful story about love and grief and found family and friendship. And it is traumatic at times, but it is without doubt one of the best anime and manga of my life. And it was one of the very first manga I ever read when I was sort of like 11, 12 years old, just getting into it. And I recommend it to anyone who ever wants to get into manga. If you are looking for a poetry book, I recommend Enough by Kevin Dorman. This is a book written in verse and features a lot of mental health. It does have mentions of suicidal thoughts and depression. It's a book about identity, belonging, loss. It's so emotional. It's based off of Kevin's own experiences, and it honestly made me, I think the first two poems had me tearing up, and there are a couple that I have said that eventually I'm going to do a painting and have them written out, and I'm going to have them actually on the wall because it was just so beautifully written. And yeah, I thought it was a gorgeous book, and I think everyone should read it, especially if you've had a similar journey with either mental health, depression, or if you are trans and going through some of that process where you're struggling to with your identity. This is a fantastic book for you. And then finally, if you are looking for a retelling, I recommend Alice by Christina Henry. This is a fantastic retelling. It is very dark. It does feature sexual assault in there, I will warn, because I did forget to warn someone recently. I think it was Ren. I forgot to warn. But yeah, it does start off with Alice, and it does describe what happened to Alice and how the state she was found in, and it does talk about like rape and sexual assault. So please do be aware, it is a very dark retelling and it is very haunting. But the relationship that she establishes with Hatcher, the story that they come up with, the magical realism in there, everything about this book was just so good. I've read it twice, I've loved it twice, and is another one that I highly recommend to everybody. So those are my 12 in 12. Obviously, I myself am going to be doing it. I've posted on Twitter already asking for recommendations, but also please do recommend below. Ideally, I have posted a photo of my bookshelves, and I am ideally asking for recommendations from my own TBR shelves, which are not these ones, they're the ones that are upstairs. But that's just so that I don't have to keep buying books. But if you think there is a book that I absolutely must read, please do link it below. I hope your reading in 2024 goes really well. And I hope at least one of these books may have piqued your interest to maybe give a go. And if it is sat on your TBR shelf, you're now going to think about including it for a challenge next year. I hope you're all good. I hope you're staying safe. And until next time, bye.